Hi, my name's Lee, I'm from MGI, and today I'm going to show you how to replace a folding mechanism. Okay, so to replace a knuckle or folding mechanism, you're going to need an electric drill with a Phillips head piece. We'll also need 8 rivets, which we'll be replacing from these 8 points here. You're going to need a small Phillips head screwdriver to undo the cap, and we'll also be needing a 6mm drill so that we can drill out these rivets for all 8. Now to start off, I'm going to get the cable disconnected from the top box, pulled through this arm and out of the knuckle. So I'll start with removing this casing. Popping that off. Keep all the screws together, not to lose them. And we'll have to disconnect the stem cable from the plug of the ITB. Once that's been disconnected, we'll now have to disconnect each cable one by one from the red plug. I'd make note of each colour to make sure that when it is reassembled, you do them in the correct order. So I'm using a fine pointed screwdriver just to lightly push down on each arrowhead so that I can remove them from the casing. Once the plug is disconnected, you'll then have to remove the heat shrink. I'd suggest to pull out one by one and make it a lot easier. Set the heat shrink aside and remove the grommet. Yet again, feeding them through one by one will make it a lot easier for you. And set the grommet aside. Now that you have the cables freed, we'll work on getting the cable fed through the handle to this middle point. So I'm going to use a Phillips head screwdriver to take the casing off, which is 2 screws. It's 1. And 2. Placing the cap aside, you'll now be able to gain access to the stem cable. Now you can use a guide wire to attach to the end of this, but myself, I'll be able to feed through because the knuckle will be disconnected from this handle. It'll be easier to feed the cable back through, so I'll go without connecting a guide wire this time. But by all means, if you feel it necessary, feel free to attach one. Once the cable is out, we'll now focus on removing this knuckle. So we want to drill out each one of these points, which I'll do now by attaching a 6mm drill piece to the electric drill. Being careful not to scratch any of the plastic as you go along, drill out each rivet one by one. Okay, so once each head has been drilled off, we'll just need to punch it through with a 4mm punch. So just give it a light tap. until each rivet is into the chassis. At this point, you may want to use a little bit of lubrication. I'll use a bit of silicone spray. Just to soak into the handle, make it a little bit easier to pull out of position. Now you can simply give it a light tap and you should be able to pry it loose. Like so. Just put this to the side. Now ensuring that the knuckle is not locked in to the point at the bottom, you should be able to just tap with a mallet until the knuckle is off. Feed the cable out of the knuckle, and that is how to remove the knuckle. Okay, so now we're just going to replace the knuckle. So the first thing I would note is to make sure that you give this a little shake and make sure that there is no more swarf or any rivets stuck in the tubing, which is the same as the top handle as well. You want to make sure that's shaken and there's nothing else in there, otherwise you're going to get rattling and interference through there. So now once you get the new knuckle, you want to grab your stem cable and feed it through. I must make a note that it is a lot easier if you feed it through, if you feed the cable through the knuckle without assembling it first. So feed it through like so. And twist the cable. Like so. Once you've got the cable fed through, you can put it into position like so. And now we'll focus on putting the top handle into position. Okay, once you've got the cable through the knuckle and the knuckle's fastened onto the bottom half, you want to feed the cable through the top half of the handle. Make sure the cable is nicely twisted so that you can feed it through. Until you see it poke its way through the hole. It might just sit there, so you might just need to give it a bit of a helping hand to come out. Once you get the cable through, you can then reassemble the knuckle. Like so. Now that the cable's all the way through, I would firstly put the grommet back into position. using a fine screwdriver, you should be able to poke the grommet in. You'll need to put your O-ring grommet through, so I'll do that, as I mentioned before, one at a time. Otherwise it would prove quite difficult, so just feed these through one by one. If you're having trouble getting these through, a little bit of silicone spray can act as a good lubricant to help it all through a lot easier. Feed the grommet over the cable. And slide it back into the position. Like that. Last but not least, we have the heat shrink, which will feed each wire through individually. It can also be a bit easier to stretch this out a little bit if you're having trouble getting them through, by using a pair of pliers or whatever you can find to stretch it out a little bit. Sometimes prove to be quite difficult to feed through. Once you've got every cable through, slide it over and reattach, remembering the colour coordination that you pulled it off in. Most important to do that. So we'll start with red. Just come disconnected slightly. I'll just use a pair of pliers to tighten that back up again. So we go from red to black. Yellow. Once that's all put through into position, you'll notice the cable's a little bit long. So we want to get a pair of pliers and just pull this cable out a little bit from the top control box. So about there, so that we can tie a loop in the cable as it was found. Once the loop has been created, fasten the grommet back into position, tuck the cable behind the screw points and plug back into the ITB. Grab the top box housing, just being careful of the antenna. And refasten it all up. Once the top box has been reassembled, we want to focus on making sure this is all fastened up by putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rivets back into the folding mechanism. Now we'll do this by using the 8 rivets and a riv gun. Simply load one rivet into the gun apply a slight bit of pressure and put into position. A couple of turns and the rivet's in place. Okay, once all 4 rivets on each side have been put into position, we want to make sure that this latch has got a decent amount of pressure so that the knuckle folding mechanism will not slip. So if need be, you can tighten up the nut on the other side with a 13mm socket. This one's nice and tight, so I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to replace the cap. Screw it back into position. And there's how to replace the folding mechanism. If you'd like any more information on how to do repairs, please visit our website www.mgigolf.com. Thanks for watching.